Ready?
Yeah.
What's up, fellow fantasy-loving friends? This is Josh and
Max
from RSMP Tabletop, and I'm excited today because this is kind of the first podcasty episode we're doing. I guess the intent of this would be while you're painting or working, you kind of throw this on in the background. But we're going to talk about a few things, including I'm going to introduce you guys to one of the newest members of the team.
Max again, yeah.
Max again.
How's it going?
What's up, Max? Tell me a little bit about yourself, Max.
Well, you know me for a while, but maybe some people watching don't. I've been playing 40K tabletop games for a long time. Magic the Gathering originally from way back, probably 2000, something like that. And playing a lot of 40K now, trying to get into Kill Team, playing Battletech, but always looking to like branch out and try something new. So
nice. So I'm actually going to kind of take you on the team as the 40K guy. It seems to me like just the way your brain works, you're a very intelligent, methodical, thought out person. Growing up, we used to play Call of Duty 4 together. And I remember Max was like the first one to hit 10th Prestige. And then he was the first one to get the gold AK-47. And everybody talked about how good he was. And I was an MP5 guy. We got to play one day. And I think Max killed me like 9 times in a row. And I was so frustrated. And then I started this channel. We didn't talk for like a long time, right? I mean, we did some Call of Duty, including like playing Magic the Gathering on your mom's kitchen table at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And then, we kind of lost touch as we grew up. And then you saw what I was doing on this side of things and reached out.
Yeah. I thought it was really cool what you were getting into. So yeah, I wanted to see what was happening.
Yeah, so the train you actually see here is Max's. He's brought some stuff over. We did play one game of 40K so far to kind of get our feet wet and see what it's about. But what I kind of want to do with this channel and what I want to do with this episode is just kind of get everybody on the same page and caught up to, what we're trying to do. My intent would be I want to grow and learn about Warhammer and, a lot of other small skirmish games as well, including, the bigger games up to 40K. But I don't think there's like a de facto place where you just go and you sit down and you're like, okay, that's where I'm going to learn. I think you find a group of people that you like, you can learn and grow with them as they go. I want to be the guy that kind of asks the stupid questions or, maybe doesn't quite put it together. And I want you to be the guy that kind of corrects those things and smooths it out and makes it make more sense for the viewer.
Yeah, I think that could be cool, and I'm interested because I want to see your development, I guess, in the whole thing. Like we had talked about, you're just barely starting to dip your toe into the painting and all that kind of stuff. I think that's going to be really cool.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're going to do coming up is we're going to focus on kind of the pre-production that it takes to even get into before you start playing the game. So we are going to do some building. We're going to do some painting. So that'll be a future episode. And actually, we're going to be able to do that because 5 Star Games in West Springfield, who we just did our last video with, has been very generous and they're backing the channel and they're going to help us out with some stuff. So cool. Because of that, we're going to be able to show you how you go from taking something like this and turning it all the way into the painted, unbelievable magic pieces that you see on the table in the videos that we shoot.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be a lot of fun.
So Max, if somebody's thinking about getting into 40K, it can be kind of scary because there's a lot of moving pieces. So that's one of the things I want to touch on first. So I was a little bit hesitant and a little bit scared to want to just play 40K because, again, 2,000 point armies, there's a lot of rules. There's, a lot of things going on. To me, taking the bite of like a smaller skirmish game seemed a little bit easier. And I didn't know what game I wanted to play at first. We looked at like Malifaux. I really liked Arena Rex and, a few other games out there. But the more I shot the Warhammer universe, the more I just kind of was like, I think Kill Team might be the perfect place to start. We obviously love cinematic stuff, so the whole cinematic theme of the game being tied in, I think it's a good fit for us. And I think that Kill Team kind of allows us to start there and then grow up to maybe like an escalation league. And then from there, I think that's where you're going to kind of take over and start doing the 2,000 point big 40K things.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think that'd be very cool. I think that there's a lot of fun place to play in that in-between space between your 500 point and 2,000 point games, and I think it'd be cool to have that progression as we go. I think there's a lot of interesting things we could do there.
Yeah. When you started playing and you got into this, where did you start out?
Well, I started in 7th edition. I used like a late 6th rule set originally, and then we moved into 7th. The game was very different back then. The points values were a little bit different. The rules system was insanely different compared to now. A lot less streamlined, a lot more like sort of realism focused in terms of line of sight and a lot of things like that. Template weapons. It's a very different game now, and it's a much better game now, in my opinion. So I enjoy it a lot. I think you're gonna get an easy handle on it compared to how it was back then, even if you can believe that.
Nice. Well, it's funny actually. You mentioned back then. Back then, I played a lot of Magic, and I was into tabletop as well. But Warhammer and like these other skirmish games, like I don't know how I missed the art to it. Like I knew that like there was some building and some painting, but like I didn't realize that it was this in depth. And like I ended up one of the reasons I kind of started this channel is because in the morning when I'm drinking my coffee, I like to jump on YouTube and watch something that's just a little bit different. And Eons of Battle came up. And I just kind of watched him paint a little bit and talk about the lore and stuff like that. And before I knew it, I was watching a lot of his videos and I kind of got hooked into it. What would you say, like, what's your favorite part about Warhammer? Like, there's so many aspects, right? There's the playing, there's the building, there's the lore. You got into it back in the day on 7th edition, you said, but what was it that, like, that initially grabbed you?
For me, and I think this is true for a lot of people, it's 100% the setting of the game. It's the setting and the aesthetic of the game. I mean, there's nothing equivalent to it. Sort of like the classic grim, dark, sci-fi setting of 40K. It's not replicated anywhere else. I mean, the closest you're gonna get is I don't know, like Dune is kind of an influence. Old movies like Starship Troopers. There's a bunch of different things that are similar and sort of they're like, sort of dark, like hopeless sci-fi setting, but nothing is as expansive and as like flavorful as 40K in my opinion in that regard. And so I love the lore. I've read every single Horus Heresy book basically that's been published so far. A ton of the other modern stuff. Yeah, I just love it.
Nice. So you actually said a term there, Horus Heresy. Now, this is kind of one of the things that's confusing about Warhammer to get into. There's 40K, there's Horus Heresy, there's Kill Team, there's Necromunda. What are these things that I'm listing right now?
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong about that. So it's interesting because each one has its own sort of setting, both in place and time. Like Horus Heresy, that's like a historical version of 40K in a sense. It's like you're playing like a World War II skirmish game or something, or a World War II tabletop game, but it's in the 40K setting. So it's 10,000 years before the typical 40K game. And then Necromunda, it's little gang battles just taking place on one planet, Necromunda. And on and on. So there's quite a lot to it. I mean, there's probably games that they make that you're not even aware of, like Adeptus Titanicus, Aeronautica Imperialis, where it's like just Titans that are like scaled down and just planes and all things like that. Games I haven't even gotten into, but I'd be willing to try. They seem cool.
Yeah. Well, so those things we're talking about, would you equate them to like, so there's Magic the Gathering, but then there's different flavors of Magic. There's Commander, there's Standard, there's Legacy. So like Horus Heresy, Kill Team, like those are like different flavors of the game, but they all exist in the 40K universe.
Yeah.
Or 30K universe.
Yeah, you would still call Horus Heresy the same universe as 40K, but again, yeah, it's sort of its own thing. It has its own characters, its own plot. But I actually think Horus Heresy is almost cooler in a lot of senses. The scale of it and the narrative and the drama is like a lot more epic than 40K. But that's just me. I think it's great.
Nice, nice. Well, so you when I first started to get my dip my toe in here, you were like right away like, no, you're playing 40K. Like we're gonna end up getting to the 2,000 point army.
You have to. It's the game. It's the game. Other games are great, and I like a lot of other games, but it's the game.
When you started playing, did you just jump right into 40K or did you do an escalation league or anything like that?
No, I jumped right in. A buddy of mine got me into it, and he had lots of armies. He was big into orcs, but he had tons of other stuff, and we just, like, 5 of us just racked up to a table, and we're like, all right, let's all grab some models and start playing. And I think we used some, like, hacked together 6th edition, 5th edition rule set. We didn't really understand how to play, but it was a ton of fun. And yeah, it was basically just Garage Hammer for like the better part of a year and a half until we got more involved in it. But yeah, it was like the full size game from the start. There's a lot of bumpy blocks on the way to actually playing it correctly from there. But like I said, it was also a more complicated game at the time. It was a lot of fun now. It was a lot of fun. I have fond memories of that.
Nice. Well, that's kind of what I'm trying to capture. Like that's what I'm saying. That's the magic to the game. It's those nights. It's remembering those, like the times where you showed up at the game table with your buddies and you jumped into something and you had a blast doing it. You had mentioned a little bit earlier, one thing I want to circle back to a little bit is we kind of talked about like the lore of 40K and how vast the universe is and stuff. You recently actually turned me onto a series. It's like a black and white like detective noir series in this 40K universe. Where are those videos? What was that?
That's on the streaming service that Games Workshop puts out, Warhammer TV. I knew you'd be into that because it's your kind of vibe. The sort of like the detective noir, sort of like crime drama sort of concept. Yeah, I was a big fan of that one. There's a ton of other great stuff on there. You got to check it all out at some point.
Yeah, no, I certainly will. But I think no, you're right. For me, at first when I looked at 40K, I thought it was just like this total war. There's just like these mech bots just destroying everything. I didn't realize like, well, no, but then there's these smaller hive cities, and there's still people, and there's still like there's a lot of moving elements. So it's like no matter what you like in fantasy. In the 40K universe, you can find something that fits your play style. And I think finding the right game, I guess game mode for lack of a better term, whether it's kill team or a 2,000 point full blown army fight or whatever, that's a big part of it too because I like cinema, I like cinematic, I like the story, I like that stuff. So for me, kill team seems like it might be the perfect fit. Um, when you started playing 40K, like were you completely overwhelmed by the rules, or did you feel like you had enough people in the community helping you bridge the gap, or were you just so into it that you were able to go online and consume enough content to like learn and make it simple?
I want to say at the time it was basically just like I didn't really care that I didn't understand it completely, and just sort of fumbled my way through it. Like it wasn't really a big deal. We weren't playing competitively, so to speak. We were just throwing together games in the garage. So I didn't find it particularly intimidating, especially coming from a lot of the other things that I've done. But that said, if you're trying to jump right into the full complete package of you want to do competitive level 40K, which is what a lot of people are into now increasingly, the demand on you as a player to perform and to know your rules and that kind of thing can be pretty high. So it's understandable that somebody would be like, I don't know. But I think in reality, you really should just have a more laid back attitude to it. And, in reality, most people do as well. So I would say you shouldn't sweat it too much, even if you want to play at that level, in my opinion. People are very understanding to that thing because it's a very complicated game. It's rare to see several rounds in a row where nobody makes an error. I can't think of any time I've ever seen that happen. So
Yeah, I guess I was kind of surprised. So I talk about why I started the channel, and again, one of the reasons is to stop misconceptions. You look at the people playing the game, from this outside point of view, and they're smashing plastic, but it's so much more than that. That's a misconception I'm trying to break by showing how cinematic it is. The other thing I'm trying to break the wall on is like it's not as intimidating as it seems, right? Like yes, there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of this, there's a lot of that, but when you think about like, well, how can I go play out if I don't know how to do this stuff, right? Like look at the people that I've interviewed. Look at the community that I'm showing. Like these people, they don't care what level you're at. They want you to walk into the store. They want to teach you. They want to play with you. They want to show you the game. I think the thing that really blew my mind the most about this was the first time I watched you guys play. At the beginning of the game, you kind of get together with your opponent and you talk to them about your army and you kind of like fill them in with all like the crazy things you could do, right? Like what's that about?
Well, there's sort of this, like, I guess you'd call it a gentleman's agreement in competitive 40K, which is that, like, you, at the beginning of the game, you tell your opponent, like, look, here's all the really corny stuff I could pull on you that, is going to seem really unfair if I do it without telling you beforehand that I have that ability. So, cards on the table, this is what I can do. And your opponent kind of does the same thing. And that's just basically to prevent people from, like, feeling like they won or lost the game on the strength of, like, some weird little interaction that having foreknowledge of beforehand they would have avoided, and that's sort of done just because of the fact that there are so many rules in the game that to completely avoid them would be like difficult to like some like a 6-inch heroic intervention or a funny little rule where I can charge you if you charge somebody near me like Imperial Knights have or had stuff like that. It's just to make the game fun and play well for everybody, basically.
Yeah, no, and again, like my first time to really see this game being played was you guys were at a 40K tournament. I was there, watching you at Games and Friends, and the store was beautiful. It was the first time I've been there. It recently opened up about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I think they said, and it's the place where you were kind of playing a lot, and that's where when we had first kind of touched base, you were like, oh man, you got to come check out Games and Friends, and that's also in West Springfield on Boston Road, or is that Springfield?
Springfield proper.
Springfield.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's on Boston Road. And that store is great too. And again, like they've just got, it doesn't matter what level you're at. You can walk in there and there's people that will sit down and play with you. And they have Todd there, who is a tournament organizer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure his exact role, but he does something in the 40K community. They started like an RTT, the point series or something in this area.
Well, he runs the 40K events at Games and Friends, so he runs the RTTs, the GTs. He's got a buddy of his helping him run them now as well, and sometimes they'll trade off. But he does a great job, like getting people into the game at the store and organizing the events and making sure everything runs smooth. I definitely recommend anybody check out the Games and Friends events. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it yet, we did do a video there, so we got to talk to Todd, we got to talk to the owner a little bit, and we got to kind of see what's going on down there. So you get to see a little bit about the community before you go down. And again, it's not intimidating, it's not scary. There's people like Max or that like Todd that just they want you to walk in the doors so you can sit down and learn how to play something cool. All right, so we've kind of talked about a little bit, about the games and some of the systems and why we chose what we've chosen and kind of where we're going. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is, this is kind of where I'm talking about now, where I need you to bridge that gap for me and help me from making a bunch of mistakes and wasting a bunch of money. I think that the first thing that you do when you decide what game you want to buy or play, like you obviously have to do the research and figure that out. But once you've decided, you have to get the game, right? So I got 2 different boxes from Kill Team, which we'll talk a little bit about in the actual video itself. But I'm going to be doing an episode where we build, where we paint, and it's kind of all the pre-production that it takes to get up to before you can even play the game. Do you like the building and the painting aspect of the games?
I definitely enjoy painting. I don't really like building that much. I like posing the models and like coming up with like creative ways of posing them and putting them together. But I don't particularly enjoy clipping them out of the sprue and like filing them and that kind of thing. To me, it feels like work, but it's kind of worth it to get to the painting stage, which I really do enjoy.
So a sprue is actually this piece right here, which I didn't realize. People talk about the art that Games Workshop puts into just like making and designing these to get all the pieces on, because again, like, this is the body of the orc here, but you choose the head that you want to put on him. You choose the weapon that he holds and how he holds it. And based on the weapons that you choose and you actually build him with, that's what he does in the game. It changes it. So, I didn't even realize that. I just thought they were pieces that you got. So like your decision making starts from like, what army do you want to play? And then how are you even going to build them? Then how are you going to paint them? Because all those things matter and mean something. The only thing that doesn't really matter is the way you pose them doesn't actually have any bearing in the game, right? That's just stylistic.
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay. So the way I'm going to go about this at first is I was down at 5 Star Games in West Springfield, and I was talking to Chad. And again, he's going to help us out with some stuff in the future for some of these videos. I told him that I need some stuff to start building, and he had recommended this plastic glue by Citadel. He said, super glue is great. It has its place, but this also helps kind of melt the plastic and give it a better bond. He said, I'm certainly going to want some of this when I start building. And then the other thing that he recommended is he said, you need pretty much a good pair of snippers or nippers or whatever they're called. They're called a million different things. This helps you kind of cut all the pieces out of the sprue and get it ready to go. That obviously glues it together. And then is there any other pieces that you could think of? Maybe like a file or...
I actually don't really like using files too much. A lot of people use them for removing mold lines and from removing sort of like the sprue clipping marks. Because a lot of the time, once you actually cut the thing out of the sprue, the actual point where you've clipped it, depending on how closely you've clipped it, it will have like a little bit of a bump remaining. Some people use a file for that. I find files often use marks. I like to use an X-Acto knife and just run it really close to the edge and just sort of like shave off that little bit. I find it's a little bit cleaner. But there's a number of ways of going about it.
Perfect. That's actually great because that's kind of that bridging the gap from what a beginner would think to somebody that's kind of done this before. So that's certainly a little technique that I'll, take you up on. So I've got this stuff to build it, which I don't know. I just feel like it's important. I know it's not going to be great, but I have to build my first army myself. Like, I want your advice on it. I'm going to get that stuff, but like,
you're not going to screw it up.
Yeah, I feel like I have to have that beauty. And then the painting. The painting's what I'm worried about. That's where it's like, it's not going to be the way I want
it. I'm not going to let you screw that up.
So here, but before you correct me, here's what I'm thinking about painting now. So again, I've watched some Eons of Battle, and again, I'm not a painter. I have no background in that, and I've never played this game before. My process, I think, is going to be, after I'm done building and, deciding how I want to get all that stuff done, I'm going to use the Army Painter, just like a black primer for a base. And then I think it's a process that's called zenithal priming, if I'm not mistaken, where I'm going to use Army Painter white, and you kind of spray it down from the top of the model. And then what that does is it kind of mimics like the way that the light would shine off if it was coming down.
Yeah.
And then after I've done that, I'm going to use something that's kind of like a cheat code called Army Painter Speed Paint. Now, what I learned my first time painting was I went straight from the bottle onto the model. And you lose a lot of features that way. I didn't know you should like dilute the paint by cutting it with water and doing some other stuff like that. But the Army Painter Speed Paint, the reason I make the joke that it's kind of a cheat, you just paint it on and it dries in different layers and thicknesses to like mimic different shadings of that color. So you can kind of go over something once and get like a better desired effect.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Now go ahead and school me on the way it's really going to go and what I really need to...
No, I mean, you're basically right. I mean, those products, and there's a few companies that have come out with them now. Games Workshop has their own one. They're basically just like, I guess they're sort of like... They're sort of like shade paints or ink paints that have a little bit more of a pigment to them. And they work really well. And you can paint a model just using those. And it's fast and easy and it works well. So you're not wrong that'll definitely work. The one thing I want to adjust to what you had said in your technique is I want you to try a little bit of dry brushing in between. And basically just mimic what they're calling a slap chop technique. Which is basically in between your zenithal, or I guess it would actually be after the zenithal. You come in with a brighter color. So, for example, you would start with the black, like you had said. You'd come in with a very light gray or a gray from above with the zenithal, and that's going to get you your shadowing. But then when you're done, you come in with a dry brush white, maybe with probably like a makeup brush. I find those are extremely good because of how soft the bristles are. You really can't smear at all with those kind of bristles. And you hit it with that, and what that's going to do is it's going to give you even more gradient in your depth of the model, and it's going to pick up those edges, and it's going to mean that when you put the speed paint on, you're going to get even more contrast from the dark recesses to the light edges.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. The one thing I don't want to say I'm worried about is like trying to do the facial features and like getting the eyes and stuff down.
You're not even going to do that with the first guys. Don't even sweat it. Or if you are like the orcs, their eyes are just red. Just put a little red dot.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
You'll see.
So you had brought up dry brushing. Now, first, here's the thing. Like with paints, there's not just paint. There's washes. There's bases. I mean, there's a ton of different stuff. And then there's like things that you can use to cut the paint or do all these other wild things. But you said the term dry brushing. Dry brushing is actually really wild because dry brushing is when you take paint on a brush, but then you wipe it all off. And then you go over the model, and wherever it's got high edges will actually collect a little bit of that paint. It won't stay on the rest of the model at all, but it really
It will a little bit.
Does it really?
But you want that a lot of the time, yeah.
Well, it probably helps like fade it in a little bit, but it really does add like this crazy depth by doing something that's
I love dry brushing. It's my favorite. It's so easy. It's the easiest thing. It's the easiest thing to do in painting, and so many people don't do it, and it's the most fun and it's the easiest. It's like why do you not do it? I don't understand.
Yeah, no, I don't know. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have the next few videos where it's going to be some building, it's going to be some painting, and then essentially we're going to play our first game of Kill Team. After I do the first army, I do have some other stuff because, not to ruin the surprise, but we got the starter box and we got Into the Dark. I decided to go with Into the Dark because I liked both of the armies that I came with, but I really like the terrain. And
yeah, I'm a big fan of the terrain too.
Yeah, there's something about... I just wanted to open that bigger box and just get that as my first experience. And then I did start with the starter kit as well because it comes with the orcs and then the other...
They're like Krieg Imperial Guard, the guys with the gas masks.
Which I'm bummed that I didn't know the name on those guys because those are the ones that I really want to start with. That's going to be my starting army, I feel like. I love this. Yeah, I love the style. I love that there's a medic. You know, like I said, I was a full-time firefighter paramedic for a lot of years, so there's some like appeal to that. But on the flip side, I love the orcs in this world. I love the way they talk. I love the way they build things. I love the way they're reckless. But I could feel like the other member of RSMP Tabletop who we'll meet, I could see him being an orc player because of the way he is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll kind of get into that. But in Kill Team, do you have a faction right now or an army that you're thinking about that interests you? I mean, we kind of got 4 to choose from here, and you've probably got some stuff. But what's getting your gears going?
Well, I've just started getting into Leagues of Votan, or Votan, not sure which. And trying to build a big army for them. I've got like almost every single kit. Hard to find the Sagittars and the Hearthguards still right now, so we'll see when those show up. But beyond that, yeah, I've got a huge army plan for them, and I want to see how they play in Kill Team. I just really like where they fit in the rules. I really like the aesthetic of the army, so I think it would be cool to get them in Kill Team and see how they play. I don't know even if they have Kill Team rules yet to speak of. I haven't even played 2nd edition Kill Team, so it's going to be kind of a learning experience for me too. If for whatever reason I can't run them, maybe I'll try some of my Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines. I have the Adeptus Custodes already done, but I want to paint something new for this, so I'm thinking a few things. We'll find out.
Nice. Space Marines were the other army that I just like, I don't know, I almost felt like I had to start with those guys because they're just so iconic to this universe, but I don't know. I didn't, but they're the other ones that I was like really on the fence about, you know, wanting to try. I think for me, I already know the color scheme I want to use, and it's just because it's kind of like the running scared color theme. I know that color does make a difference in your army, but you're basically able to paint whatever color you want and call them like a custom faction, right?
Yeah, you could certainly do that, and really in practical terms in 40K, any of the games, like nobody cares what you paint them as in terms of like their in-game rules. As long as people know what you're doing when you're playing them, like you're not trying to play two like identical rule sets. God damn it.
Oh, I'm not worried about it, man. No, you're fine.
Yeah. As long as you're not trying to play like, say, you know, blue Space Marines and blue Space Marines that look identical as 2 different factions, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I think I saw somebody do a technique that I thought was actually really cool, where they basically did a black base, and then they did like a white dry brush, and it was only those 2 colors, and it was just black and white, but it created like so much depth, and it just looked really, really cool. And since I'm big into like the noir and stuff, I could see us doing figures like that kind of down the road. I do have some Deadlands noir figures that I actually tried painting on, and it's funny because, so I tried painting a long time ago. I sat down and I bought, there's a comic book or a graphic novel called The Goon, and it actually came out. There is an RPG tabletop game to it, and they've got miniatures. So I bought The Goon and I bought Frankie, and I tried to paint him. And you actually kind of gave me a compliment when you saw him. You're like, wow, like you actually, like the way you brush, like you get it. Like you can edge, like you're going to be able to do this, which made me feel pretty good. But then I didn't do anything for like years after. And then I sat down when I kind of got into this and I thought about doing the channel, and I sat down with some Deadlands Noir stuff, and I set a timer for an hour. And I'm like, well, you know, after this, we'll see how it goes. 5 hours later, I finally stopped painting for that day, and I just had so much fun, and I was just so intrigued by it. But those are the only 2 miniature painting experiences I've ever had. So when I sit down to do it this time, it truly is going to be like, I'm not a painter, I'm a noob. But I've watched, I've learned, I've talked to people now, and I think I've got the skill set that I need to kind of go in and make them look not horrible at least.
No, they're going to look genuinely good, I guarantee you.
Nice. Awesome. RMX, I'm glad to have you on for this episode. I'm glad we were able to introduce you. I think it's a good way to wrap up now. I just want the viewers to know that if they're watching, get ready to learn and grow with us. We're going to be building, we're going to be painting, we're going to be learning the games and progressing, and then Max is going to be teaching us the more advanced portions of the rules and kind of helping bridge that gap. Got anything else you'd like to say or add?
No, I think we're good.
You're not even going to thank your mom or nothing?
Thanks, Mom.
There you go. Until next time, stay safe.